They were already assembled, rows of skeletal forms arranged with quiet order along the deck. They stood upright, perfectly still, without breath or sway, awaiting. Algol raised the oculus, and the tide responded. The sea pulled inward like a wound drawing breath before the scream. Deathmoid stood in the eye of that silence, and in the midst of it, the quiet voice in the back of his mind became louder. The oculus flickered in the stillness of its own will, a compulsion tied to his thoughts like rigging on a ship. He did not resist it as he stepped to the center of the deck. Spoken in a language lost even to the tides that once carried it, he whispered, "Bind them." The mortis oculus blazed, and the parish jerked, like strings pulled taut for the first time. "Let wreckage be vassal. Let ruin be command." The tide surged upward, curling around the hull, coiling above the deck in shifting black ribbons, each drawn towards a figure like smoke reaching for a flame. He pressed the mortis oculus into the first skull. A red flare burst through its sockets. The creature then shuddered and stood straighter, joints locking like thought reborn. A light in its chest, a dull ember, brightened. One by one, he moved among them. Each time the oculus touched bone, the tide carved through the figure, infusing its new will, animating what already knew motion but lacked direction. They turned, each pair of burning sockets locking onto his frame, tethered to his gaze, as if they remembered that they had always waited for him. Each distinct, without the burden of a past, and now anchored to a singular purpose. Deathmoid paced slowly between them, the oculus casting each one's shadow in long slivers across the deck. For a moment, just a moment, he felt the pull again. Something inside the newly risen crew. A twitch, just a hint of hesitation, a tilt of a head that matched no command. Almost as if a will of their own remained. As if a piece of their autonomy was untouched. Algol paused. He did not correct them. He marked them. That fracture in their making was no failure. It would be a testament to the tide's chaos. It would test their usefulness, and if it endangered his vision, it would be erased. Algol returned to the helm. Behind him, the parish stood without instruction, yet they moved with one will, his. He placed the mortis oculus into a cradle he had fashioned for it, a weathered chain wound about his neck. It fit as though the pendant had always been waiting for its eye. His fingers brushed the surface, and something opened. Images suddenly flooded his vision. Chains of understanding lowered into his mind with careful, deliberate links. He saw a ship, God-touched and bound in integrity, a symbol of balance etched into its flag. Then a man, tall and still, dressed in a worn coat that knew storms more than spectacle, his right eye casting a blinding blue light as his gaze met that of the sea itself. He stood like a principle refusing erosion. Next, a woman, shadow-cloaked, ocean-eyed. She stood at the edge of a cliffside, a map in hand, as she spoke to someone who wasn't there, coins at her hip. Too quick and too clever. Smoke trailed behind her like a warning. The oculus hissed with disdain.
"She remembers."
Algol tilted his head. He did not recognize them, and yet something deeper did. And the tide shifted behind his eyes again. A third form, submerged in silent distance. Deeper than any memory, a figure curled in coral, light burning quietly beneath thick water, eyes closed but breathing, waiting. The oculus dimmed. No name was whispered, no word was spoken. But fear, thin and buried, stirred in the orb's center. Deathmoid leaned closer.
Show me more.
The Mortis Oculus did not respond with voice. Instead, it showed the aisles themselves, each one speckled with fragments of resistance. Some knew what they held, most did not. Temples forgotten beneath a jungle, stone vaults sealed in cliffside hollows. A compass, cracked in two, hung around the neck of a blind priest. Each one radiated with a sickened light, the glow of unspent divinity. The Apeirus shards. He felt them, 7 in total, scattered across the known sea. 7 pieces of a past that refused to die.
They delay the drowning,
Algol muttered.
and so they must be erased.
There were places across the Tide Realm Isles where the tides resisted his influence, where eddies bent around hidden anchors and the black waters recoiled. Shattered altars buried beneath temple ruins, and shipwrecks formed around still burning hearts of divinity. Caves where coral grew in shapes that denied his name. And then the voice returned.
The old powers protect themselves. Their heirs still breathe.
Deathmoid's grip tightened.
Let them draw breath.
He stood taller.
Let them sail.
The Mortis Oculus pulsed once more as the repossession turned south, pointed like a blade tip towards its prey.